It was a quiet Sunday morning when Tom, stepped onto my porch with a steaming mug of coffee, my old Labrador dozing by the door. The birds chirped, the air smelled of fresh grass, and I was ready to sink into the newspaper. But then I heard it, a thumping bass line, not the soft hum of a neighbor's barbecue, but the full-blown roar of a wedding reception. I frowned, assuming it was a block party gone wild, until I wandered down the path to my backyard pool and froze. There, under a silk flower arch, stood a minister adjusting his collar. A bride floated on a pool raft, her veil trailing like a ghost. Guests in pastel dresses and polished shoes clinked glasses while waiters weaved through with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Balloons bobbed, a photo booth flashed, and a chalkboard sign declared, "Welcome to the union of Mark and Emily." My patio was a sea of rose petals, folding chairs, and a towering four-tiered cake. Not one soul had asked me, the owner of this land, for permission. I stood there, still in my robe, coffee going cold, as the audacity sank in. This wasn't a mix-up. This was an invasion. And then I saw her, Linda, the HOA president, striding toward me like she owned not just the neighborhood, but the laws of gravity itself. Her headset gleamed, her clipboard was a scepter, and her smile could have sliced steel. Before I could speak, she thrust a roll of paper towels at me. "Tom, perfect timing. The drink station's leaking. Handle it." She spun away, barking at the DJ to crank the volume. I didn't move. I watched as strangers used my bathroom, snapped selfies with my garden gnome, and let their kids cannonball off my diving board. My name was on the deed. I'd paid to resurface that pool last summer, covered every utility bill that kept it sparkling. Yet Linda had decided it was her personal event venue. My hand shook as I poured another coffee inside. Not from rage, but from a slow-burning question. What kind of person hijacked someone's home for a wedding? How many people had to agree before anyone thought to check who owned the land? I dug out my property documents, unrolling the survey map. The lines were clear. The HOA had access to the front road, nothing more. My backyard, pool, and patio were mine. No shared clauses. No event permissions. I recalled the old owner, a gruff man named Earl, chuckling when I'd asked about the HOA. "Nice place," he'd said. "But there's one woman who thinks the sun rises when she flips her curtains." I'd met Linda. Outside, Linda was giving a speech by the pool, praising the neighborhood's beauty and her pride in hosting its first community ceremony. Guests clapped as a drone buzzed overhead, filming her moment of glory. She spotted me by the fence and, microphone in hand, announced a big thanks to Tom for lending us his stunning property. More applause. I didn't smile or wave. I nodded once, turned, and walked away. 30 years in the military had taught me one thing: revenge is sweetest when your enemy thinks they've won. As the party raged into the evening, cars clogged the street, a catering truck blocked my driveway, and someone spilled wine on my stone path. Linda's husband rearranged my patio furniture for a dance floor. From my upstairs window, I watched groomsmen strip to their boxers and dive into my pool, splashing under lights Linda had strung up without asking. She sat under a rented gazebo, sipping wine like a monarch. That was the moment I decided this wouldn't be forgiven. It would be dismantled, piece by legal piece. Before dawn the next morning, I was a man on a mission. I installed motion-sensitive cameras around the property, discreet but high definition. I called the county office, confirming no permits had been filed for the event. I contacted my lawyer, sent him photos of every car plate, every uninvited face, every illegal structure. Code enforcement confirmed the gazebo was an unpermitted build, the event itself a violation without a temporary use permit. I printed every image from the wedding, cataloging the chaos. Linda had thrown a party on land she didn't own. Now I'd throw her into a reality she couldn't spin. The aftermath was a battlefield of debris. Trampled grass, plastic flutes in my bushes, a soggy napkin floating beside a forgotten boot in the pool. A designer heel was wedged in my flower bed, and muddy footprints marked my porch, where someone had dragged a cooler out, leaving it open to melt into my stairs. I spread the deed across my dining table, its red ink boundaries a silent rebuke to Linda's arrogance. Earl had once told me about an HOA dispute over this very land, how they tried to claim it for a community garden. He built a fence and poured a concrete pad to shut them down. "Deeds are the law," he'd said. I felt his ghost nodding as I prepared my counterattack. At the county assessor's office, I confirmed the HOA had no claim to my backyard. At city code enforcement, I learned events with over 50 guests needed permits Linda hadn't bothered to file. I found her latest HOA newsletter, a pastel-colored screed vaguely mentioning creative community spaces. No mention of a wedding. No vote. Just her sly wordplay. She banked on people's apathy. She was about to meet someone who read every line. At the next HOA meeting, Linda stood at the clubhouse podium, her headset a crown, her blazer a shield. She gushed about the wedding's success, winking at me as she credited a generous neighbor. I stood and spoke, my voice cutting through the room. I didn't offer my property. I wasn't asked. What happened was unauthorized. The silence was heavy. Linda laughed, saying, "Tom, you were there. You didn't object." I leaned forward. I didn't object because I was building a case. Her smile vanished. I sat down, letting the tension simmer. The next morning, she showed up at my door with a thank you card and a bottle of wine, claiming the bride's parents were grateful. I asked how she got my address. "You're in the HOA," she said, as if that explained everything. I reminded her my backyard wasn't. She brushed it off, but I tossed her gifts in the trash and added her visit to my evidence folder, along with drone footage posted online, now semi-viral. I baited her. Next, I designed a feedback form mimicking her newsletter style. I asked if neighbors supported more pool events or preferred limiting HOA access to private amenities. I slipped copies into the clubhouse suggestion box. Within days, I overheard neighbors buzzing about seasonal ceremonies. Linda was pitching my land. She'd taken the bait, thinking the forums were grassroots support. They were my trap, proof of her overreach. At the following HOA meeting, Linda unveiled a seasonal engagement strategy, pointing vaguely at my pool as a photogenic venue. Hands shot up in approval. I stayed silent until workers arrived the next day, measuring my poolside for a pergola. I sent the contractor my deed and a trespassing warning, copying Linda. Her reply was a masterclass in condescension, preaching community spirit and flexible boundaries. I didn't respond. I printed it for the folder. She escalated, planting a community event space sign on my lawn chair. I moved it to her mailbox with a note. No approval granted. She called an emergency meeting, inviting her loyalists to discuss beautification. I crashed it, holding up my survey map and asking if anyone knew the difference between HOA jurisdiction and private ownership. No one did. "This is my land," I said. "No events now or ever. Try again, and I'll sue." The room fractured. Linda's charm faltered. Code enforcement tagged her gazebo and lights with violation notices. Neighbors whispered about her overreach. She sent me a $200 bill for post-event cleanup, which I pinned to a post with "You owe me" scrawled in red. Her confidence crumbled. At the final HOA meeting, I laid out my case, the deed, photos, drone shots, and a $12,500 invoice for damages. The room gasped. Linda claimed it was a private arrangement, but I pressed. Had she represented the HOA? She couldn't answer. The board promised action. I left. My point made. Linda's empire collapsed. The HOA formally acknowledged my ownership, and she resigned amid whispers of mismanagement. Her house went up for sale, and she vanished without a word. The HOA banned events on private land without written consent. I drained my pool, posted no trespassing signs, and hosted a barbecue with a deputy, a councilman, and my cousin, a deliberate contrast to Linda's chaos. When she dared to crash it, the councilman noted my clear boundaries and the deputy hinted at her missteps. She left, deflated. I reclaimed my yard with sunflowers, a locked gate, and a red maple planted where her decorations once hung. Neighbors offered pies and apologies, but I refused to rent my space. The pool shimmered under starlight, silent and mine. Linda's reign was over, her audacity a cautionary tale. My victory wasn't loud, but it was ironclad, rooted in every document, every boundary, every step I took to remind the world, this is my land, and no one takes it without a fight.